On the day I registered my marriage with George James, a stream of bullet comments suddenly appeared above his head. Finally married, my wife, so happy, can't let her find out, stay calm, I wonder in my heart, what's going on? He said marrying me was just to help my family through a tough time and to deal with his parents' pressure to get married. He said he had a 7-year-long unrequited love of his own. Will you never fall in love with me, after getting the marriage certificate? My parents packed me up and sent me to George James overnight. They said it was to help the newlyweds develop their relationship. My dad winked at me, and the moment George James picked up my suitcase, he clapped his hands and stomped his feet, exclaiming, got it, let's not even talk about mom, laughing so hard their eyes disappeared, lightly long, lightly short, who is the real biological child after all? My in-laws really like me. I looked at George James's serious, unsmiling face, then glanced at the barrage of comments floating above his head. I really couldn't connect the two. I held my forehead, feeling so awkward I wanted to run away. When it comes to George James, everyone in Y City knows him. His outstanding appearance is the least remarkable of his many virtues. After inheriting the family business at a young age, he expanded its territory several-fold, amassing countless assets under his name. In theory, prenuptial property should be notarized. He said it was unnecessary to go to such lengths. Even if we divorced, I wouldn't be able to get a single cent through a lawsuit. That does make some sense. It's just a bit harsh to hear. Compared to him, I'm like a mosquito biting an elephant. Speaking of divorce, we signed a "you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours" contract before marriage. In short, he provided funds to help my family's company through a difficult time. I got the red book to help him deal with his family's pressure to get married. At that moment, I was completely stunned. There are so many ways to repay a favor, and it just had to be marriage. I cautiously asked, you don't like me, do you? After all, we were briefly classmates for a while in high school. When I found out he was transferring schools, I even pulled out a lock of his hair and 3 of his buttons to sell to the infatuated girls in my class. That made my month quite comfortable. Could it be that he still remembers me vividly, can't get enough of love? He raised an eyebrow, snapped the contract shut with a thud, and started chattering away like a machine gun. If you're tired, go to sleep. I have someone I like. 7 years. Do you understand what 7 years means? After we get married, we'll each go our own way. Don't even think I'll fall for you, and don't you fall for me either. I felt like I was listening to a fairy tale. He thinks his emotional intelligence is off the charts low. I didn't dislike him this much back in high school. Right then, I slapped the table and stood up in shame and anger. Then I quietly sat back down and gave an ingratiating smile. Here's the pen, please sign. Can bend but not stretch. Anyway, the contract is valid for 3 years. In 3 years, we'll get another certificate. It's all gain and no loss. For the sake of my family's big villa, let's go for it. The contract was signed just the day before, and the money was deposited the very next day. I was also dragged to get the marriage certificate. Moving into George James's house was even more awkward than I imagined. For someone so wealthy, instead of living in a large villa, he lives in a spacious apartment of about 500 to 600 square meters. After putting my luggage in the bedroom, I wandered around the house. The more I looked, the more I wanted to curse. Which designer came up with this? Although it can't compare to the big villa back home, it's still a decently sized space. How come there's only one bedroom? All the other rooms are designed as entertainment areas: home theater, gaming room, KTV, tea room, wine cellar, gym. There's just no extra guest room. I was shocked. Simply a genius. Do you want all the visiting friends to sleep on the floor together? The entire living room was quiet, with only the faint sound of George James flipping through a magazine. My inner thoughts, loading. Leaving me here without a word, he just plopped down and started reading a book. Ahem. I cleared my throat softly, trying to get his attention. He ignored me. Ahem, coughs again, still ignoring me. My wife is so adorable. How do I talk to my wife? I don't dare to speak up. I swing my fist through the air, scattering these bouncing words. I make a face at him. What a huge show-off. I didn't expect him to turn his head and meet my gaze the very next second. I was shocked. With the spirit of a dead pig not fearing boiling water, I cleared my throat, pretending to be calm. So, where do I sleep? Want to sleep with my wife. I widened my eyes and blurted out, what are you thinking? I don't sell my body. It's over. This is what happens when you speak without thinking. What's my wife thinking about? I didn't even say anything. I quickly waved my hand, laughing awkwardly and saying, Oh, that was just my second personality, so cute, huh, is this cute too, how obsessed is he with me? I'm going to call an ambulance, sigh, this damn charm. George James leaned back on the sofa, his neck relaxed and tilted to one side, a few buttons of his white shirt were undone, revealing a vast expanse of spring scenery. I stared at his face, damn capitalist, looking so outrageously good. Is this pose correct? It's the first of the 100 most seductive poses as rated by netizens on Little Fan Book. I was shocked. Stop pretending, buddy, say something. It's almost midnight, I'm so sleepy, the atmosphere is awkward. I still ignored him. And a few minutes later, his neck might have gotten sore. When I sat up straight, I heard a crack sound. Damn it, I pressed my lips into a tight line. George James said, sleep in the bedroom. Of course, I knew to sleep in the bedroom. Why couldn't this person read between the lines? I snapped angrily. Where are you sleeping? He replied, the bedroom. I was shocked. Didn't we agree to leave each other alone and go our separate ways? How come you're trying to go all the way with me as soon as I move in? Hee, so happy. I'm really a genius at decorating. Actually, I had a secret crush on George James for a short while during high school. He had excellent grades. He looks like he's from a different layer than the other male classmates, and he sits next to me every day, with a budding heart. It's only natural that I like him. But it seems like he doesn't have a romantic bone in his body. I handed him water, and he said, I don't drink cold water. I said I didn't know how to solve this problem, and he replied, the teacher hasn't taught it yet. I asked if he wanted to go see a movie over the weekend, and he said, you're at the bottom of the class and still have the mind to play. I said, oh no, I sprained my ankle, and he responded, that's really bad. I said someone likes you, and he replied, the top priority is building a beautiful motherland, no early romance, and you should do the same. I was shocked. Bro, shouldn't you normally ask me who it is? Then I could follow up with, it's me. How am I supposed to respond to that? Over time, I let it go. He transferred schools and left. One bed, a clear boundary between us, only left him a tiny bit of space. His tall figure lay on the edge of the bed, the blanket neatly covering him without a single wrinkle, not moving a muscle, as if he were dead. I tugged at the blanket, feeling a bit soft-hearted. Come over a little, will I eat you? No need, I'm going to sleep. So nervous, my wife's voice is so sweet, good thing I don't snore, so I won't disturb my wife. Here we go again. I rolled over and scoffed, what a show-off. Hope he falls off the bed in the middle of the night. Little did I know my words would come true. Around 3 in the morning, a loud thud echoed as something heavy hit the floor. Holy shit, an earthquake. I dreamed that I led the Chinese national football team to the World Cup, having 10 players form a circle, placing the football inside and kicking it back and forth. Just like that, we kicked it all the way to the opponent's goal. The opposing team had never seen such tactics before and had no way to deal with us. Forced to be on the defensive, just like that. I led the Chinese national team to win the World Cup championship in one fell swoop. The opposing coach asked me for advice, and I said with an air of mystery, it's all Chinese kung fu. Immediately, I began demonstrating my leg techniques right in front of him, leaving the entire audience in awe. Suddenly, a loud bang. The entire venue shook as if an earthquake had struck. I was jolted awake, thinking I was still in my own villa, habitually reaching for the lamp on the bedside table. I found nothing but empty air. Only then did I realize that today was different from the past. I, the older sister, had become a wife. I forgot where the bedroom light switch was, so I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. Where's that big guy George James? A muffled groan. George James slowly stood up from the dim light, holding his butt. What's wrong with him? Hemorrhoids, honey, nice legwork. That hurts. Oh my god. I just realized that it was me, in my dream, performing Chinese kung fu, who kicked him off the bed with one foot. Sigh. It's all because the soccer anime I watched during the day was too intense. George James gently rubbed his butt as he stood up, the bullet comments above his head still drifting by with a pitiful look. My wife is so strong, but my wife looks so cute when sleeping. I was so embarrassed I could dig a hole in the ground with my toes. I quickly threw off the blanket and got down to help him up. Do you want to sleep a little closer to me? I regretted it as soon as the words left my mouth. What kind of wild words are these? George James clearly stiffened for a moment, and the barrage instantly exploded. My wife invited me. Calm down, can't show too much excitement, but I really want to pounce on him. What should I do? Yet on the surface, He remained as calm as ever, no need. After saying that, he hugged the pillow and lay back down on the far side of the bed. His back looking inexplicably pitiful. I looked at the words floating above his head. I really want to hug my wife, but I can't scare my wife. Suddenly, I felt a bit amused. What the hell is this? So we lay back down, with a border still between us. After a few minutes of silence, I was wide awake. I couldn't help but whisper, "George James, what's your white moonlight like?" The air suddenly froze. His barrage also paused strangely for a few seconds, then started flooding the screen. Oh no, oh no. How should we answer? Is the wife getting jealous? Can't we just say it's the wife herself? I'd be seen as a pervert if I said it. I was watching intently when he suddenly turned over to face me. What's wrong? I blinked. Just curious. Since you said you've liked her for 7 years. In the darkness, I felt his gaze was especially intense. She's very cute. His voice was low. But she's married. So you don't need to worry about me being unfaithful. I have my own principles, of course. You should hold to yours as well. The barrage of comments scrolled by in sync. Marry me. Furious, I kicked the pillow between us. George James. Huh. Do I look like someone with no principles that you need to remind me? Even if it's a contract, I still have morals. Okay. After saying that, I pulled the blanket over my head. Actually, I was just feeling strangely shy because of those 4 words he sent with the shy emoji. My heart was racing like crazy, peeking out with just an eye again. Joking aside, I still need to read his thoughts. I know he didn't mean it that way. He just wanted to pick a fight for no reason. It's so amusing to see him unable to speak his mind. Beside me, I heard him take a sharp breath, and I felt his hand reaching over. That warmth disappeared again, as if he had pulled it back. Damn it, my stupid mouth. The art of speaking has been watched 8 times already. This man who says one thing but means another. I bit my lip. Still unable to hold back a loud laugh under the covers. In the first month of our marriage, we got along surprisingly harmoniously. He leaves early and returns early, just like a male nanny. When I wake up, he's already gone, with breakfast prepared and kept warm in the pot. At noon, he sends his assistant to deliver meals, each day different, all of which are my favorites. In the evening, he comes back very early, always carrying groceries, changes his clothes, and then heads straight into the kitchen to cook with a clatter. After finishing the meal, I didn't even have to clean the dishes. He took care of the mess on his own. Occasionally, I would put on a show and say, "Oh, let me do it, you've been busy all day." Him, out of money, without waiting for my reply, he would take out his phone and transfer money to me. Cool cool cool. That's 7 digits. My wife spends my money. My wife loves me. My wife eats my food. My wife loves me. Happiness. I was shocked. She's practically a queen. I was happily eating the breakfast George James made. Who would have thought this big shot had such top-notch egg frying skills, when my phone suddenly vibrated. Rose, I'm back in the country. Do you have time to meet up? Sender, Kevin. Kevin, how did he get my phone number? My hand trembled, and the fork clattered onto the plate. Kevin, the 1-month black mark from my college days. Back then, I was young and naive, fooled by his artsy intellectual persona. It turns out this person is just a player, and when we broke up, he shamelessly said, "You're not good enough for me. What are you doing back here?" Looking for a scolding, I instinctively glanced up at George James across from me. He was elegantly sipping his coffee, not even a flutter of his eyelashes, but his mind was already in turmoil. Kevin, why hasn't this damn thing died yet? Isn't he supposed to be a homeless person abroad? Honey, ignore him. If he dares to meet my wife, I'll make sure he ends up as a real homeless person. I almost choked on the orange juice. Oh my, how does this man manage to appear as cold as an iceberg on the surface, yet have a heart that erupts like a volcano? How did he know about Kevin? You rascal, you didn't hire a private detective to follow me, did you? All CEO novels are like this. What's wrong? George James gently set down his coffee cup, his tone as calm as if he were asking about the weather. And nothing. I quickly locked the screen. It's just, a college classmate mentioned a get-together. Liar. My wife's ears turn red when she lies. Kevin, you're done for. I instinctively covered my burning ears. George James. You're such a stickler for details. Huh. I wasn't planning to meet Kevin, but he was so persistent, saying he had something important to tell me and even threatened to come straight to my house. Even though I don't live at home anymore, I was more worried he'd bother my parents. Bothering my parents is the least of my worries. Mainly, I'm afraid my dad might beat him half to death. Back when I was shopping with my dad, Kevin happened to see us. He came right over and started cursing, calling my dad a shameless bald donkey and claiming I was his girlfriend. I almost felt like bowing to him in gratitude. In the end, I had no choice but to arrange to meet at the coffee shop farthest from home, specifically choosing 3 p.m. on a weekday. George James must be in a meeting at this time. However, I had barely sat down for 5 minutes when the cafe door was pushed open. George James walked in wearing a casual suit, sunglasses perched on his head, one hand in his pocket. His face clearly saying, "I just happened to be passing by." I was speechless. As expected, you came. Kevin, if you come out now, I promise I won't hit you. My wife looks so beautiful today. What a coincidence. He walked straight over and sat down beside me. Are you here for coffee too? My lips twitched. Yeah, what a coincidence. Didn't you say you had meetings all day today? The meetings were cancelled, he said without changing his expression, while naturally reaching out to rest his hand on the back of my chair. My wife smells so good. Amazed face. Why hasn't Kevin arrived yet? Come here and I'll beat him to death. Didn't you just say you wouldn't beat him to death? At that moment, Kevin pushed the door open and entered. 5 years had passed, and his appearance had completely transformed. A handsome and refined college boy turned into a beer-bellied, balding man. Oh my God. What on earth happened? But that nose-in-the-air way of looking at people is still the same arrogant attitude. Rose. His smile froze when he saw George James. Who is this? Before I could speak, George James extended his hand. Her husband. So satisfying. So satisfying. Awesome. Kevin's expression looked like he'd just swallowed a fly. You got married? Yeah, just got married. I deliberately leaned sweetly against George James, feeling his arm instantly tense up. Oh, I'm gonna die. My wife's face is so soft. I want to kiss it. Get lost already, Kevin. Kevin forced a smile and sat down. Actually, the reason I came back this time is to tell you. She doesn't want to hear it. George James interrupted him lightly. If it's about borrowing money, forget it. I've checked your financial situation. I turned to look at him in shock. When did this guy investigate? The text even put on sunglasses, looking smug. Stayed up all night checking last night. The rival must die. I'm such a genius husband. Kevin's face turned ashen. I'm not. Then you're here to show off that gallery of yours that's about to go bankrupt. George James continued to twist the knife. By the way, your partner ran off with the money yesterday. I'm holding back my laughter so hard my stomach hurts. George James wouldn't let Kevin finish a single sentence, cutting him off halfway through every time. He made the guy's face turn purple from holding it in. Kevin's expression was absolutely priceless, and in the end, he slunk away, finishing his coffee in one gulp before leaving. Good heavens, the principle of not taking advantage of a bargain is a fool's game has been ingrained in his bones for so many years. On the way home, George James drove calmly, but the barrage above his head was jubilant. We won. My wife is mine. I'm going to eat 3 bowls of rice tonight to celebrate. While waiting for the red light, I couldn't help but lean over and kiss his cheek. Thank you, hubby. The car jolted violently, almost running the red light. That was too forward. Mind your manners. Can I be even bolder? My wife kissed me. I'm never washing my face again in this lifetime. I laughed so hard I couldn't straighten up. This man who says one thing but means another is just too adorable. I discovered this secret entirely by accident. That day, George James was having a video conference in the study. I placed a cup of coffee beside him and happened to see a line of subtitles floating above his head. My wife looks so adorable in this sweater today. I want to hug her. My fingers moved faster than my brain. At the time, it was purely because his gaze was too intense, his words too straightforward. It made me feel very shy. Gently pressing my fingertip on that line of semi-transparent text, I silently counted to 3. My wife looks so adorable in this sweater today. I want to hug her. George James's voice suddenly rang out in the quiet room, startling me. The executives in the video conference collectively fell silent. I saw George James's neck instantly flush red, his fingers frozen on the keyboard. He paused for a full 3 seconds before forcing himself to continue. What I mean is, this project proposal is quite adorable and needs further embrace. Team discussion. Bullets exploded above his head, with text flying in all directions. What did I just say? My vocal cords betrayed me. I fled in panic, hiding in the kitchen before daring to laugh out loud. This is practically a cheat code specifically designed to deal with George James. The next morning at breakfast, I deliberately sat right across from him. George James was reading the financial newspaper, with a thought bubble floating above his head. There's jam on my wife's lips. I really want to lick it. I quickly pressed down on that bullet comment. My wife has jam at the corner of her mouth. I really want to lick it. He only realized what he had said after reading it aloud, crumpling the newspaper with a rustle. I pretended to be surprised and wiped the corner of my mouth. What did you say? You misheard. He lowered his head and gulped down his coffee, the tips of his ears so red they seemed about to bleed. The barrage is scrolling wildly. What the hell? Why have I been blurting out my thoughts so often lately? Who's secretly controlling me? Whose cake did I take? While he went to get the toast, I pressed another one. Even the way you walk is so cute. Even the way you walk is so cute. He froze in place, and the toast fell back onto the plate with a thud. I tilted my head. George James, have you been under a lot of stress lately? He took a deep breath. And the barrage of comments turned into, I'm done for. I need to see a neurologist. The weekend business cocktail party was my first appearance as Mrs. George James. In the past, I was always my father's daughter, my mother's daughter. Don't say it. This feeling is really different. One word, awesome. George James, dressed in a sharp suit, is conversing with a client, but the bullet comments reveal his true nature. This old man talks so much. I really want to go home and watch TV with my wife. This client is my dad's longtime close friend, so a little teasing shouldn't be a big deal. My mischievous thoughts are stirring again. I quietly move closer and press down on the barrage. This old man sure talks a lot. I really want to go home and watch TV with my wife. The air suddenly fell silent. The client's smile froze on their face. Inner thoughts, you're done for, kid. George James's expression was absolutely priceless. I watched his Adam's apple bob as I forced myself to smooth things over. What I meant was, Mr. Wong's insights into the TV industry were truly enlightening. The barrage of comments went wild. Am I under some kind of spell? Is this the legendary karma for misspeaking? While he was in the restroom, I waited for him in the hallway. The bullet comment read, wife's perfume today. I quickly pressed to stop it. Wife's perfume today. He abruptly stopped, realizing he was being controlled again, and gritted his teeth, saying, Rose. I blinked, feigning innocence. He suddenly took a step closer, trapping me against the wall. The barrage of comments flashed intensely. Keep playing with fire and I'll kiss you until you cry. I immediately held my breath. Wow, I really don't dare to do that. Lately, he whispered softly in my ear. Have you been up to something? His warm breath made my legs go weak. The barrage is still scrolling. So fragrant. Must resist. Can't scare her. I blushed and pushed him away. Mr. James, you should go back to the social event. That night, I couldn't sleep. When I tiptoed to the kitchen to get some water, I noticed the study light was still on. George James lightly dozed off on the desk, the computer screen displaying research on the causes of sudden speech disorders. What a poor guy. The notebook beside him was densely filled with notes. Third time uncontrollably speaking my mind. It only flares up in front of Rose. Could it be destined fate? I told you we were meant to be. My heart softened, and just as I was about to leave, I suddenly saw translucent text slowly appear above his head. I wish I could speak my true feelings every day. That sentence I didn't dare say when I transferred schools in high school. I still don't dare now. My finger hovered in the air, but in the end, I didn't press it. The next morning at breakfast, he handed me a velvet box. Dark circles under his eyes. Inside was a necklace, its pendant concealing a tiny microchip. He explained with a stern face, this isn't a GPS, don't overthink it. If I start talking nonsense, just press it, and I'll get an electric shock. I just noticed he was wearing the same necklace around his neck. I held back a laugh and put it on, and the comments immediately turned into, success, my wife and I are matching accessories now. This fool has no idea I can see it. 1 week later, in the dead of night, I was watching a horror movie in the living room when he happened to come out for water and reluctantly sat down to keep me company. When the female lead screamed, a bullet comment floated by, if you're scared, just hug me, you dummy. This time, I didn't follow the bullet comment but quietly shifted half an inch closer to him. The next second, a blanket still warm with body heat fell over my shoulders. The bullet comments exploded like fireworks. She took the initiative to get close to me. Stay calm, don't get carried away. So happy I could run 3 laps around the neighborhood. I lowered my head to hide my smile. George James, how can you be so adorable? I was so easily won over by you. Does that make you seem really impressive? Never mind. I need to think about causing you some trouble. Over the weekend, George James was dragged back home by my parents for a meal. As soon as we entered, my mother warmly grabbed his hand. Oh, George, Have you lost weight recently? Has Rose been cooking properly for you? George James appeared calm on the surface. She's doing well. Yet the barrage above his head was scrolling frantically. My mother-in-law called me George. How can my wife do the cooking? I'll take care of it. Nervous. Where should I put my hands? I deliberately leaned close to his ear with a playful smile. My mom is asking you a question. Why are you spacing out? His Adam's apple bobbed. But before he could speak, my dad chimed in. George, when are you two planning to have kids? George James's cup slipped from his grasp, crashing onto the table and splashing water all over himself. I quickly wiped it for him. Wow, this reaction is way too intense. The barrage instantly exploded. CHCHCH child. Father-in-law is asking so directly. How can I have a child when I haven't even held my wife's hand more than a few times? I almost burst out laughing, quietly pressing my finger on one of the bullet comments. How can I have a child when I haven't even held my wife's hand more than a few times? George James's voice echoed clearly in the living room. The air froze. My dad's chopsticks froze mid-air. My mom's smile stiffened on her face. As for me, I tried hard not to let my smile show too obviously. George James's expression looked as if he had been struck by lightning, while the barrage of comments went wild. Why did I say something like that? Is it still too late to jump out the window? Rose is snickering again. My mom was the first to react, slapping her thigh. Oh my, so you two are still in the innocent stage. My dad looked serious. Rose, this won't do. Girls need to be a bit more proactive. I was shocked. Dad, you're completely turning things upside down. George James's ears were so red they could drip blood, and the barrage had already turned into gibberish. After dinner, my mom practically pushed us onto the balcony to look at the stars. And even thoughtfully closed the door. Where did the stars come from? Even the moon has hidden away. The night breeze was slightly cool. George James and I stood side by side, neither of us speaking. A bullet comment drifted cautiously across the screen. Should we hold hands? Are my in-laws secretly watching us? My wife's hand looked so soft. I turned my head to look at him and asked deliberately, what are you thinking about? He said with a stern face, it's nothing. But the words bouncing above his head betrayed him. Want to hold hands? I held back a laugh, pretending to look at the scenery, but my fingers quietly brushed against the back of his hand. George James's entire body stiffened, the text all turning bright red. She touched me. Is this a hint? Never mind, hold hands. The next second, his hand suddenly grabbed mine, with such force that I almost cried out. Got it. I must be the first person he's ever held hands with. This guy has the strength of an ox. I held her hand. My wife's hand is even softer than I imagined. I declare today a Memorial Day. Before I could even secretly chuckle, I looked up and saw my parents' faces pressed against the balcony glass. Their eyes squinted into slits from smiling. George James followed my line of sight and instantly froze. We're being watched. Is it too late to let go now? Forget it. I've already held on. I won't let go even if I die. Before leaving, my mom slipped me a box of supplements, whispering mysteriously, young people need to take care of their health. I looked down and saw various animal penises. George James, did my mother-in-law misunderstand something? We really didn't do anything. Will eating this cause a nosebleed? My dad patted his shoulder and said earnestly, George, do your best. George James nodded stiffly, already resigned to his fate. Just let it all end. On the way back, he remained silent the entire time. If it weren't for the barrage of comments constantly scrolling by, I would have thought he was truly this calm and unruffled. Do my in-laws think I'm not good enough? What should I bring next time to salvage my image? Maybe I should learn to speak normally first. I couldn't hold back and laughed until I collapsed onto the seat. He turned his head to look at me, his eyes filled with resentment, but the thoughts in his heart were soft and gentle. Never mind, as long as my wife is happy. My heart skipped a beat. I'm screwed. I think I might really like you, you rascal. It was a rainy night, with fine droplets of water condensed on the floor-to-ceiling windows, and only a warm yellow wall lamp was lit indoors. I was curled up in the corner of the sofa, scrolling through my phone, but my peripheral vision couldn't help but drift toward George James. He sat at the other end of the sofa, his slender fingers flipping through the documents, his gaze calm and focused behind his gold-rimmed glasses. A line of bullet comments floated above his head. My wife's feet are so cute. I want to pinch them. I rolled my eyes and instinctively reached out to press, but this time, my fingertip did not pass through that line of translucent text. Instead, it touched something solid, soft, slightly cool. Like grasping a wisp of mist, I froze, instinctively clenching my fingers. The entire bullet comment was pulled down by me. I was shocked. It curled up in my palm, like a glowing silk ribbon, trembling gently. George James remained completely unaware, still focused on reviewing documents, while a new bullet comment had already automatically refreshed above his head. Why is my wife staring at me so intently? My heart suddenly raced as I stared at the want to squeeze bullet comment in my hand, and as if possessed, I took advantage of his distraction and slipped it into his coffee cup. It dissolved instantly upon contact with the water. He picked up the cup without any hesitation and took a sip. The next second, his hand suddenly reached over and grabbed my foot. I suddenly shrank back, nearly rolling off the sofa. It felt as if an electric current had shot from my toes through my entire body. George James also froze, his fingers still in a pinching posture, his brow furrowed tightly, as if he himself didn't understand why he had suddenly done that. There was dust on your foot. He withdrew his hand expressionlessly, his tone as calm as if he were reporting quarterly financial results, but the new barrage above his head had already exploded. Why am I pinching my wife's foot? But it's so soft. I bit my lip hard to keep from laughing out loud on the spot. Is this considered a cheat code plus version? The most out-of-control moment was that night. He had just finished showering, with water still dripping from the tips of his hair. The collar of his bathrobe was slightly open, and beads of water clung to his collarbone. I was applying skincare products when, out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of the bullet comments floating above his head. I want to bite my wife's shoulder. Is this guy's personality that of a gloomy, obsessive Yandere boss? How can I tolerate this? I pretended to tidy up the washstand, and while he was lowering his head to dry his hair, I quickly removed the bullet comment and stuck it onto the belt of his bathrobe. His fingers brushed against the belt as he fastened it. The next second, he pressed me against the bathroom counter, his warm lips pressed against my shoulder and neck, teeth gently grazing the skin. A faint shiver ran through me. George. My voice trembled, for the first time in my life. My heart was beating this fast. This has really gone too far. He suddenly snapped awake, and as he released me, the mirror reflected his slightly widened eyes, and ears flushed crimson. Sorry. His voice was low and hoarse, his Adam's apple bobbing. I don't know what came over me. The barrage of comments had already turned into gibberish. What am I doing? Honey, you're so sweet. Help, George, get down quickly. I am shocked. Is it what I think it means? You really can't resist temptation. That night, George James went to take another shower. He still hadn't come out after more than 40 minutes. I tiptoed to the bathroom door and heard the man's deep voice. Blushing, leaning against the doorframe of the walk-in closet. I watched George James change his shirt for the third time and finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. Mr. James, are you going to a fashion show or meeting my best friend? His fingers paused, and he expressionlessly picked up the fourth dark blue shirt. How about this one? Pretty good, but whatever you wear, it's all the same. Sarah will only be staring at your face anyway. Sarah and I have known each other for 5 years, and our bond is so strong that we share everything except men. He furrowed his brows slightly, a line of subtitles floating above his head. Is my wife's best friend a face lover? I chuckled and deliberately added, Sarah's ex-boyfriend is a model, with abs you could use as a washboard. George James's hand froze midair. 3 seconds later, whoosh, he deftly unbuttoned and removed his shirt, revealing well-defined abs, and calmly said, suddenly felt this one isn't breathable, gonna change to a thinner one. Me. The barrage of comments flooded the screen, with angry symbols floating above his head one after another. Think being a model makes you special. I have 8-pack abs. Honey, look. He was rummaging through the closet with his back to me, his ears slightly flushed, while earnestly analyzing. What's your best friend's name? Which day are you meeting? Did you book the restaurant? What's her boyfriend's background? I sauntered over, took the shirt he had crumpled in his hand, and deliberately brushed my fingertips against his palm. George James, you're not nervous, are you? His Adam's apple bobbed, and he suddenly pulled me into his arms. Rose. He lowered his head, his breath brushing past the tip of my ear. I'm your husband, meeting your friends. I can't lose. The last 3 words were almost spoken through gritted teeth. Going to meet my wife's friends, must be the most handsome. If I win, can I get a reward? I deliberately said. Oh, isn't it a contractual marriage? Why so serious? Woo-woo. George James said seriously, what do you think? It gave off a feeling of giving up completely, unable to smooth things over. So why even bother trying? I poked his chest with a smile. Mr. James, your expression right now is just like what? Like a new bride meeting her in-laws for the first time. I'll remember this. Never mind, for now, I'll endure the humiliation and play the role of the obedient bride. I laughed so hard I was shaking, and after he glared at me, I stood on tiptoe and kissed his chin. Don't worry, you'd win even in a sack. He snorted coldly. How presumptuous, so very presumptuous. He turned back to continue picking out clothes, but the barrage of thoughts above his head completely gave away his mood. My wife kissed me. My wife loves me. Happy. No sacks allowed. Must win. Japanese restaurant. So this is the legendary Mr. James. Sarah's eyes sparkled as she kicked me under the table, mouthing the words, "We've hit the jackpot." I coughed awkwardly and stole a glance at George James, who was sitting upright beside me. He was dressed in a dark gray suit today, his tie impeccably knotted, and was currently sterilizing the tableware with hot water. Even the simple act of rinsing a bowl exuded an elite aura. Simon, investment banking. Sarah's new boyfriend extended his hand, his wristwatch gleaming with a subtle light under the lamp. The moment our hands clasped, I felt as if sparks were flying in the air. George James wore a standard business smile at the corner of his mouth, but a glaring line of bullet text floated above his head. No strength at all. Definitely doesn't work out. Rose says you're in the tech industry. Simon poured a cup of rice wine for Sarah. The star market has been performing well lately. George James replied tersely, his mind seething with rage. Who gave you permission to call him Rose? Think you're something special just because you work in investment banking. I was already dabbling in venture capital back in college. I quickly pinched his thigh under the table, only to have my wrist grabbed by him instead. He calmly placed a piece of salmon on my plate, a thought bubble floating above his head. My wife's hand is so soft. Wow, Mr. James is so considerate. Sarah rested her chin on her hand and winked at me. Our Simon is the same. Last week when I caught a cold, he specifically. The next 20 minutes turned into a someone else's boyfriend commendation ceremony. Every time Simon showcased a strength, George James would replicate it in an even more exaggerated manner within half an hour. Simon said he could peel shrimp. George James immediately called the manager. I'll take all the shrimp for today. Simon gently peeled shrimp for Sarah, his movements practiced. I couldn't help but take another look. George James immediately put down his chopsticks. I'll peel some for you too. I was shocked. You know how to peel shrimp, he calmly said. Give it a try. And then, smack, the shrimp flew directly onto Sarah's plate. Sarah, thanks. George James remained expressionless. Slipped. Damn these shrimp. Why are shrimp so slippery? I'll have my assistant research anti-slip gloves tomorrow. Then, facing a table full of tiger prawns as if confronting a formidable enemy, I quietly searched on my phone for how to elegantly peel shrimp. Did Simon mention buying a bag for Sarah? George James directly opened the auction app, but after I shot him a warning glance, a pitiful message floated over his head. Can't MEA compare. I'm going to the restroom. Sarah winked and slipped away, and Simon also politely excused himself from the table. The private room door had just closed when George James pinned me in the corner of the booth. Your best friend has terrible taste. He breathed against my ear. Simon is clearly very capable. Before I could finish, he suddenly leaned close to my ear, his warm breath instantly sending a fine shiver through my entire body. He glanced at you 3 times just now. I stared at him in shock, watching the barrage of comments scrolling wildly across the top of his head. Your waist isn't as slim as mine. That shirt is last year's style. Your Adam's apple moves so pretentiously when you talk. Oh my god. First time seeing male competition in real life, of course, one-sided. Simon practically has eyes glued to Sarah. If he's looking at anyone, it's George James. I snap out of my thoughts. This is no tech mogul, just a big kid in kindergarten. When the couple returns, Simon is holding an exquisite gift box. I heard Mr. James is treating today, so I brought this Romani Conti from the wine cellar. As the deep red liquid poured into the wine glass, George James suddenly pressed down on my hand just as I was about to raise the cup. She's allergic to alcohol. After saying that, he downed my glass without changing his expression. After 3 glasses, I discovered a terrifying truth. The legendary Mr. James, known for never getting drunk after 1,000 cups, actually gets tipsy after just 1. Honey, George James suddenly buried his burning face into the crook of my neck while I was drinking miso soup, nearly choking me to death. His fluffy head nuzzled against my collarbone. The breath carried the mellow aroma of wine. Warm exhalations brushing against my skin, making me unable to suppress a shiver. you smell so good." He inhaled deeply like a large dog, his nose tracing along my carotid artery. "It's the scent of peaches." Sarah's chopsticks clattered onto the table, and Simon's expression looked as if he had just witnessed aliens landing on Earth. I frantically tried to push his shoulder, but he took the opportunity to grab my wrist and press it against his chest, through his custom-made Italian shirt. I could clearly feel his rapidly accelerating heartbeat. "Let go, you've had too much to drink," I warned in a low voice, catching a glimpse of Sarah already pulling out his phone to start recording. "Sarah, you're dead." "No," he pouted pitifully, suddenly gently nibbling my earlobe with his canine teeth. "It was only 3 glasses, the wine was just bad." Sarah trembled all over from holding back laughter, while Simon silently moved his chair half a meter back. Never expected the industry's most sought-after big shot to be a clingy person behind the scenes. Simon glanced at Sarah, who was laughing happily. He sighed, "Ah, it's all the same, love your wife, and you'll prosper." Seeing George James becoming increasingly uncontrollable, Simon coughed tactically. "How about we first?" Sarah wiped away tears of laughter as she stood up. "Sweetie, we should get going now." I quickly waved goodbye. If we didn't leave soon, I'd be tempted to carry George James and run. Others carry the kind-hearted one and run. Should I carry George and run? I looked at his reddened eye corners and moist black eyes. The barrage floating above my head had already blurred into a mess. "Want to kiss? Need a hug? Why are you wearing such a revealing dress?" "What my wife wears is her own choice. I'm just a little unhappy about it." Finally, these 2 comments made me look down at my own modest, high-necked dress, leaving me speechless. "Don't you dare leave." George James suddenly stood up, slamming the table and nearly knocking over the dinner plate. He wobbled as he pointed at Simon's retreating figure, then turned to me with a pitiful expression. "Honey, he was just sneaking a peek at you." "I wasn't, I was clearly looking at you." Simon's defense was drowned out by Sarah's burst of laughter. Soon after, Simon quickly pulled Sarah out of the private room, leaving the troublesome situation behind. George James didn't even listen to the explanation, simply straddling my lap directly. Yes, a grown man of 187 centimeters was clinging to me like a koala. "Honey, let's go home." "Okay." He played with the ends of my hair, his lips almost brushing against my ear. "I want a kiss." "George James." My face flushed red as I tried to cover his mouth, but he kissed my palm instead. The wet, soft sensation made me jerk my hand back as if shocked. He chuckled triumphantly, fine lines crinkling at the corners of his eyes. The drunkard completely ignored my little flame, earnestly rubbing his nose against my cheek. "Last night, in the middle of the night, when you turned over," his voice suddenly dropped to a whisper, his breath tickling my ear canal, "your pajamas rode up." I flushed from head to toe in an instant. This jerk had been pretending to be asleep, damp and gloomy. "Male ghost." He chuckled creepily, like a pervert. "There's a little red mole." "Shut up." "Ah." I quickly covered his mouth, but George James repeated his old trick and took the opportunity to kiss my hand. His eyelashes cast a fan-shaped shadow under the light, looking as innocent as a mischievous golden retriever. I used his own words to counter him. "Who exactly is being presumptuous? Who told you to kiss me? Who told you to bite me? Tell me, which one of us is really being presumptuous?" He blinked, revealing 2 sharp canine teeth as he smiled. "I want to be even more presumptuous. Is that okay?" I gently stroked his face, actually gave him a slap. "Dream on, call his assistant, and together we'll carry this drunkard home." After seeing the assistant off, I returned to the bedroom and let out a long sigh of relief. But then, the drunkard suddenly got up and pinned me down on the bed. His weight was suffocating me. "Finally home," he sighed contentedly, his moist lips brushing against my collarbone. "Can we kiss now?" "You dare." I frantically pushed him away, but he grabbed my wrist and pinned it above my head. His pupils, dilated by the alcohol, looked like 2 bottomless pools of ink. "The day you moved in." His thumb stroked my pulse. I wanted to do this. A kiss carrying the scent of alcohol lands on the side of my neck, then in the hollow of my collarbone. His tongue is soft, leaving a damp trail on the skin. I feel weak all over, watching helplessly as a line of glowing subtitles floats above his head. "Hee. I like you so much. I like you so much." "Rose, you get up first." My voice was so weak it didn't even sound like my own. "No." He playfully rubbed his nose against mine, then pressed down with a hint of mischief. The scorching breath carried a slightly intoxicating sweetness. "It really likes you." Just as I was considering whether to hit the back of his head with my phone, this CEO suddenly, like a robot that had lost power, slumped against me and fell asleep. Warm, steady breaths brushed against the nape of my neck. George is still burning hot. Ah, George James, I'll kill you. My furious roar startled a flock of sparrows outside the window. I was applying serum in front of the bathroom mirror when I suddenly heard a dull thud coming from the bedroom. Peeking out with a toothbrush in my mouth, I saw George James sitting awkwardly on the floor. The stray hairs on his forehead were sticking up in a messy mess, 2 buttons on his shirt were misaligned, and his tie was still hanging around his neck, like a cat that had been struck dumb by lightning. Awake. I deliberately made a loud gargling sound. He turned his head stiffly, his gaze drifting as if trying to bore a hole through the ceiling. I swear I saw the tips of his ears visibly turn red. Last night, his voice was so hoarse it was almost unrecognizable. He cleared his throat, trying to salvage the situation. Did you what? I tilted my head, feigning ignorance. Are you talking about the part where you wouldn't let go of me, or the part where you nuzzled my neck, or maybe the part where you kissed me? He abruptly stood up, only to trip over his own feet and stumble. I quickly reached out to steady him, feeling the muscles in his arm tense rigidly under my palm. Sarah sent me the video. I waved my phone. Want to see it? You were actually kind of cute when you were acting all clingy. He snatched the phone from my hand. I watched as his fingers trembled while he tapped to play the video. On the screen, a drunken version of him was clinging to my waist, mumbling, "Wife, why does he keep looking at you?" He stared intently at the screen, his Adam's apple bobbing a few times. Suddenly, he locked the phone, tossed it onto the bed, and turned to head straight for the bathroom. Hey, I chased after him. That's it. Aren't you going to explain what you mean by liking me? Really liking me? I deliberately drew out the words really liking me. The bathroom door slammed shut in front of me, and the sound of running water immediately followed. Leaning against the door, I heard a muffled voice from inside. That was my second personality. I was shocked, learning pretty fast. 10 minutes later, he emerged with damp hair, already dressed in a crisp suit, even the cufflinks meticulously fastened. If not for the lingering redness at the base of his ears, there would be almost no trace of last night's demeanor. There's an early meeting today. He walked straight toward the door without glancing aside. George James, I crossed my arms. You're not thinking of running away, are you? His hand paused on the doorknob, his shoulders tensing up. I sauntered over slowly. The great Mr. James, after spilling the truth while drunk, you think you can just brush it off like this? He suddenly turned around, pinning me against the wall, his breathing rapid and heavy, his eyes filled with struggle. Our noses were almost touching, and I caught the faint scent of his aftershave. Damn it, just say it already. His voice was so low it was almost inaudible. I like you, so what? Not allowed to. My heart skipped a beat, and I deliberately teased him. Oh, so you can just let go of 7 years of feelings like that? You like me that quickly? He took a deep breath, his forehead pressed against mine. Don't worry about it. After saying that, he quickly kissed the corner of my mouth, and while I was still stunned, he dashed out the door, not even noticing his tie was crooked. I stood there, touching the corner of my mouth, when suddenly I heard a thud from the entrance. Probably bumped into the doorframe again. The phone vibrated, and Sarah sent a message. How did it go? What was your Mr. James's reaction after he sobered up? I looked at the chat interface and slowly typed. He ran away. Acting like a shy elementary school kid. Such a hypocritical man. He even forgot his phone on the bed. The lock screen wallpaper is still a photo of me from high school. I knew from the first day we got our marriage certificate that the 7-year crush George James had been talking about was actually me. But I never really felt it, because during high school, he really didn't seem to have any feelings for me. George James went to the company for a meeting, and I was so bored that I decided to help him organize his study. His study was always tidy, except for the bottom drawer of the bookcase, which was locked. I hadn't thought much of it, but when I bent down, a hairpin fell out from a gap in the desk. It was the strawberry hairpin I had lost in high school. I was stunned. That thing had been missing for ages. How did it end up with him? Driven by curiosity, I tried a few passwords. Finally, I used my birthday to open the drawer. George James, you're done for. Inside the drawer, neatly arranged were the eraser I used in high school. It's engraved with exclusive for Rose. A few crumpled draft papers, filled with ugly cute little figures. My masterpiece of slacking off in class, an unopened pink envelope. It says to Rose on it. The handwriting so familiar it makes my heart race. With trembling hands, I pick up the envelope and turn it over. To Rose, Class 3, Grade 11. Is this the love letter he wrote to me back then? Just as I was in shock, the study door suddenly swung open. What are you doing? George James stood at the doorway, his expression instantly changing. I shook the love letter, squinting my eyes. Mr. James. Care to explain? His Adam's apple bobbed, and a barrage of frantic bullet comments flooded his mind. I'm done for. I'm done for. I'm done for. She saw it. Is it too late to pretend amnesia now? I sneered. So your 7-year white moonlight is actually me. He froze in place, his ears turning so red they seemed to drip blood. After a long pause, he finally managed to stammer out, let me explain. All right, explain. I crossed my arms and leaned against the table. For example, why did you write me a love letter but never give it to me? He fell silent for a few seconds before finally whispering, I gave it to you. What? This letter? I had Kevin deliver it to you back then, he said calmly, though his eyes darkened, but he never gave it to you. My mind went blank with a sudden buzz. Kevin, that ex-boyfriend who cheated on me in college, actually intercepted my love letter back in high school. George James walked over, gently took the envelope, and rubbed the edge with his fingertips. I found it in his backpack when he dropped out of school. I widened my eyes. So you already liked you back then. He lowered his gaze, his voice almost inaudible. It's just that later, you seemed to stop liking me. My heart suddenly tightened. Back when he transferred schools, I truly moved on quickly and soon forgot about this person, yet he remembered for 7 years. The air was terrifyingly still. I opened my mouth, about to speak, when his phone suddenly rang. An assistant's anxious voice came through. Mr. James, something's wrong. Someone anonymously leaked that your marriage with your wife is a contractual arrangement, and it's spreading all over the internet now. Both George James and I froze at the same time. He quickly opened the trending topics. Hashtag George James contract marriage, hashtag Rose Business Alliance marriage, hashtag inside story of James Group acquisition case, hashtag. The accompanying picture is clearly the prenuptial agreement we signed. George James's eyes suddenly turned cold. Find out who leaked it. Assistant, we've already found out. It's Kevin, him again. I clenched my fists in anger, but George James suddenly smiled. He leisurely unlocked his phone, opened a document, and handed it to me to see. Marriage Supplementary Agreement, Article 1. The original contract is void and shall be permanently effective. Article 2. Rose holds 100% ownership of George James, irrevocable. I froze. When did you change that? He curled his lips. The day after we got the marriage certificate. Wow, you've been planning this for a long time. A bullet comment floated by at just the right moment. I originally wanted to wait for my wife to confess first, but now I can only announce it early. I hadn't even processed what was happening when he suddenly pulled me outside. Where to? To the press conference. He turned back, a smile in his eyes. And by the way, to make certain people give up for good, at the press conference venue, camera flashes went off like crazy. George James gently held my hand, facing the cameras with a calm tone. Regarding the contract marriage rumors circulating online, I am here to officially address them. He paused, then suddenly pulled out a small red booklet from his suit pocket. Our marriage certificate. The entire room erupted in an uproar. This marriage did indeed begin with a contract, he said, looking directly at the camera, his voice steady, but I unilaterally tore it up on the very day we registered. The reporters erupted. Mr. James, what do you mean? He turned to look at me, a gentle smile in his eyes. It means, whether there's a contract or not, Rose will never get a divorce in this lifetime. The entire room fell silent for 2 seconds, then erupted in screams. The barrage of comments was scrolling frantically above his head. Honey, look at me. Am I handsome? Would it be too presumptuous to kiss her now? Never mind, just kiss first. Before I could react, he suddenly cupped the back of my head and kissed me in front of countless cameras, live streaming across the entire network. Trending topics exploded. That night, Kevin's social media accounts were exposed with a large amount of damaging information, leading to a complete social death. And George James's social media updated a post, 7 years of secret love, now legally held. The illustration features that yellowed love letter and 2 marriage certificates. I comment, if I had known you liked me back then, I should have charged more for the button. He replied instantly, now I'm all yours, sell me however you like, fans. Is this something I can watch for free? Late at night, when all was quiet, I was curled up on the sofa scrolling through comments. George James hugged me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. Still mad, I snorted, I'll forgive you for now, He chuckled softly, suddenly pulling the strawberry hair clip from his pocket and gently pinning it into my hair, returning it to its rightful owner. My heart skipped a beat. And I asked deliberately, George James, have you had a crush on me since high school? He fell silent for 2 seconds, then suddenly pressed me into the sofa, his voice hoarse. It wasn't a crush, it was an open crush, you just never noticed. Then why did I drop such obvious hints? And you remained unmoved. So I went to take a language arts class. I thought we were both making an effort back then. Fine. This marriage turned out to be his long-planned legal kidnapping, and I willingly boarded his pirate ship. As I adjusted my skirt in front of the mirror, George James was already adjusting his tie for the 3rd time. Mr. James, I couldn't help but tease, are you preparing for a red carpet event? He expressionlessly tied a Windsor knot. It's just a class reunion. I'll dress casually, wear the most expensive suit, spray the most expensive perfume, make all the male classmates feel ashamed of themselves. I held back a laugh and deliberately leaned in to sniff. Smells like money. George James's ears turned slightly red. Just as he was about to speak, his phone suddenly vibrated. A classmate sent a voice message in the group chat. Where are you guys? Class monitor Kathy is already drunk and reminiscing about his youth with everyone. Hearing that name, George James's eyes darkened. I didn't notice his unusual behavior and eagerly scrolled through the class group chat. I heard Kathy is single now. Back then, he was. Before I could finish, my waist suddenly tightened. George James's arm wrapped around me like an iron band, his warm breath brushing against my ear. Back then, what? Back then, I blinked. He was the second in our grade. Is being second in the grade really that impressive? Back when I transferred schools, I was number 1. I finally snapped back to reality. George James, they might even have kids by now. What on earth are you jealous of? Absurd. He released his hand, elegantly adjusting his cuff. Mr. James. A classmate's relentless call rang out again. Kathy says he's going to read aloud the love letter Rose wrote back then in public. The air instantly froze. George James's tie snapped open with a pop, and the barrage exploded like fireworks. Love letter. I never received one. Is it too late to silence them now? Under the crystal chandelier, Kathy was swaying with a wine glass in hand. After all these years, the once handsome top student had transformed into a slightly plump social elite. Yet the way he looked at me still sparkled. I was shocked. We're not that close, Rose, he exclaimed excitedly as he rushed over. Do you remember that year in senior high? George James subtly took a half-step sideways, precisely creating a distance between the two. Class monitor Wong. He extended his hand with a smile. Long time no see. The moment our hands clasped together, I felt as if I could hear the mournful cry of Bones. Kathy winced in pain and withdrew his hand. Yet he still stubbornly leaned in closer. Rose, I'd actually always wanted to tell you. George James's barrage was already a storm of blood and rain. Distance, 50 centimeters, hand placed on the wife's chair back. The level of affectionate gaze is off the charts. Recommend permanent account suspension. Just as the atmosphere was growing tense, Kathy suddenly pulled out an exquisite box. The George James button you sold me back then. Can I buy it back? I'll pay 10 times the price. The entire room fell silent. Seriously, dude, the real deal is right in front of you, and you're asking me for it. Someone else spat out their drink. So you've had a crush on Rose for 10 years, all for the sake of course, it's to collect all the campus heartthrob merchandise. Kathy, tipsy, opened a box neatly displaying buttons, class schedules, and even eraser shavings. Now, all I need is a single strand of hair to summon the dragon. George James's barrage of comments froze. Withdraw the killing intent. I was trembling with suppressed laughter. It turns out Kathy is George James's dream man. Suddenly, I was yanked up by a strong force. George James announced expressionlessly, sorry, we need to fulfill our marital duties. What duties? Hey, I was half carried, half dragged out of the private room, with the teasing cheers of my classmates following behind. It wasn't until I was shoved into the car that George James finally revealed his true emotions. He gritted his teeth and pressed me down. Miss, care to explain just how many merchandise of mine you sold back then? Under the car's ceiling light, his collar was slightly open, the bite mark I left on his collarbone last night still visible. A sudden realization dawned on me. Mr. James, you're not possibly jealous, he admitted bluntly, leaning down to nip her earlobe. So tonight, you're responsible for putting out the fire. Amidst the roar of the engine, the final bullet comment drifted by. He. I was shocked. Let me off this car. I never imagined that George James's bullet comment inner thoughts could actually be inherited, until my daughter Tina was 4 years old. She pointed at a little boy in kindergarten and said to me, "Mommy, Jackson said he likes me." I was about to laugh and tease her when I suddenly saw a line of semi-transparent text float above the little boy's head. "Her braids look like strawberry cake. I really want to take a bite." I was shocked. This familiar handwriting, this familiar drawing style. Trembling, I pulled out my phone and sent a message to George James, who was in a meeting. "Something big has happened. Your genes are too strong." 3 seconds later, the reply came, ? I took a photo and sent it over. "Your daughter has an admirer." The chat interface showed typing for a full minute, only to end with 3 words. "I'll be right there." When George James arrived at the kindergarten, the air around him was so tense it could freeze someone to death. Jackson was secretly tugging at Tina's braid, a thought bubble floating above his head. Hee, so soft. Then he met George James's deathly glare. "Daddy," Tina happily rushed over, her little finger pointing at Jackson. "He said you're handsome." In reality, the barrage above Jackson's head had already changed to, "Help, there's a monster." George James gently crouched down and calmly asked, "Do you like my daughter?" Jackson was so frightened he trembled, and the barrage went wild. "I won't dare anymore. I won't dare anymore. Mom, I want to go home. This uncle is so scary." Tina suddenly hugged her dad's neck and whispered in his ear. I leaned in to listen. "Dad, he just said he'd share his chocolate with me. Can I have some?" George James was speechless. I watched the thoughts floating above his head. Just some chocolate. Is my daughter only worth this much? Tomorrow, I'll buy the chocolate factory. George James, calm down. On the way home, Tina sat in the child seat, swinging her little feet. "Mom, why do all you grown-ups have words above your heads?" Both George James and I froze at the same time. For example, Dad now has "must teach daughter to stay away from those brats when we get home" written above his head, and Mom says "I want hot pot tonight." George James slammed on the brakes. I covered my face and wailed, "It's over. My secret of many years is now out in the open." What does it mean to be able to see everyone's bullet comments? It means George James's aloof persona at the company is about to crumble. It means I can no longer secretly complain about him being a closet pervert. It also means, "Mom," Tina suddenly pointed out the car window, "that lady has this car is so expensive. I want to stage a crash" written above her head. George James instantly changed lanes, perfectly avoiding the pedestrian who suddenly rushed out. Our family of 3 fell silent for 2 seconds, then spoke in unison. This ability seems quite practical. That night, after George James had coaxed Tina to sleep, he opened his computer with a grim expression. I leaned over to take a look. Child Psychology, How to Communicate with Superpowered Children, on the Controllability of Genetic Mutations. Stop looking it up. I poked his tense back. If it weren't for this ability, I definitely wouldn't have fallen in love with you so quickly back then. He turned and pressed me into the sofa, his fingertips brushing my ear. Is my wife feeling quite pleased with herself now? I deliberately raised an eyebrow. Someone's comment said, "My wife's gloating expression is so adorable too." 1 second before being kissed, I saw the last line of text float above his head. "If we have another son, will he inherit my business acumen?" I bit him hard. "In your dreams." Mini theater. The next day, the kindergarten teacher sent a message. "Tina said her mom can read minds, and all the kids are so impressed." George James replied, "Tell her that Dad will confiscate the chocolate." Teacher, okay. I had a dream. In the dream, 17-year-old George James didn't transfer schools. He still sat in the seat diagonally behind me. Every morning, I could hear the sound of him pulling out his chair and smell the faint scent of laundry detergent on his uniform, until one morning during self-study, a neatly folded letter suddenly fell out of my textbook. The moment it unfolded, I nearly jumped out of my chair. To Rose, the signature was George James. In the dream, my heart raced wildly as I secretly glanced back at him. The sunlight fell perfectly on his profile, casting a small shadow from his eyelashes beneath his eyes. He pretended to calmly do his homework, but the tips of his ears were flushed bright red. With trembling hands, I opened the letter, inside which was only a single line: "Meet me in the equipment room after school." No unnecessary words. That's George James's style. Everything in the dream was terrifyingly clear. I clearly remember how restless I was during the last class, the sound of the wind rustling the curtains in the hallway, and the creaking noise when I pushed open the equipment room door. He stood by the window, backlit, his school uniform jacket draped over his shoulder, holding a bottle of chilled soda in his hand. "You're here." His voice was lower than usual, tinged with a hint of nervousness. I clutched the letter, my throat dry. "Why did you ask to see me?" He fell silent for a few seconds, then suddenly shoved the soda into my hand. "Here, take it." "That's it." "No." He took a deep breath. "There's one more thing." I looked up at him and noticed his eyes were shining with an astonishing brightness. "Rose," his voice was soft, yet resolute, "I like you." The sunlight in the dream suddenly became blinding. I squinted my eyes and saw the 17-year-old George James slightly lower his head, tentatively leaning in, only to be interrupted by a furious roar. "You too, what are you doing?" The dean's bald head appeared at the door, the flashlight beam so bright it was blinding. George James instinctively shielded me behind him. "Teacher, we were just discussing how to build a beautiful motherland," I interjected. "Director." George James turned his head slightly to look at me, the corner of his mouth twitching, a line of bullet comments floating above his head. "Rose really knows how to make things up." At the end of the dream, George James was being punished to write a self-criticism. While I lay on the desk secretly watching him, he writes a line, then looks up at me, the barrage of comments constantly refreshing. "Her eyelashes are so long, she looks so cute when she sneaks a peek at me. I want to kiss her." I couldn't help but laugh out loud, and he immediately put on a stern face. "Focus on your homework." Then he secretly held my hand under the table. When I woke up, it was still dark outside. George James's arm was draped over my waist, his breathing steady. I turned gently, looking at his sleeping face in the moonlight. It overlapped with the boy from my dream. "What's wrong, honey?" He suddenly spoke, his voice hoarse with sleep. I leaned close to his ear. "George James, I dreamed you wrote me a love letter." He stiffened, his eyes slowly opening. The barrage instantly exploded. "Just mentioning this makes me angry. Damn Kevin." I smiled at him. "So it turns out you liked me first back then." He remained silent for a long time, then suddenly flipped over and pinned me down. "Rose, huh? Can I make up for that kiss now?" After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.